Hello, greetings from the Israeli Embassy in Washington. I'm delighted to be here with you on Twitter. And thank you, those of you who sent in questions. I'll be happy to answer them. From MJS Smith asks, when will the Israelis end occupation of lands that do not belong to them? And what precisely are Israel's borders? Well, the lands which I think MJS Smith is referring to, the West Bank, what we call Judea and Samaria, we regard as the ancient ancestral homeland of the Jewish people. They literally are tribal lands. Israelis have as much right to live in those lands as Americans have to live anywhere in the continental United States, their homeland. But we also recognize that another people, the Palestinians, also regard that land as their homeland. And we have expressed a willingness and a commitment, indeed, to moving forward to a solution where we can share this land and live side by side, two peoples with two states in a position of permanent legitimacy, durability, and peace. The borders of these two states will be determined in negotiations, and only by negotiations, not dictated by any outside third party. At that point, I'll be able to answer the question fully, hopefully soon, what are Israel's borders? And indeed, what are the borders of our neighboring Palestinian state? A question from Goldilocks. Can Israel make the U.S. administration understand that withdrawal from occupied lands inflames Israel's enemies and further demands are perceived by the Arab world as weakness? Certainly Israel's had a bad experience with unilaterally withdrawing from Arab lands. We withdrew from Lebanon in 2000, from Gaza in 2005, and in both cases, Israel's acts of withdrawal were greeted by thousands of rockets on our civilian centers. And we are aware that withdrawal certainly unilaterally can risk creating a situation of weakness, particularly when Israel cannot respond forcibly to acts of aggression from across our border. In contemplating a future Palestinian state living side by side with Israel in permanent peace and mutual recognition, we've taken these risks into consideration, and therefore we have requested that any future Palestinian state will be demilitarized, that it will not have an army that can threaten us, it will not be able to make military pacts with Iran or with terrorist organizations that could threaten us, that it will not control an airspace in which aircraft or missiles can fire at civilian airliners landing at our major airport, which is very, very close to where this future Palestinian state may come into being. Yes, we take a risk in making peace. It's part of the great challenge we face in confronting the future peace process. We are aware of the dangers. We are doing our utmost to try to minimize those dangers and create a situation where true peace can endure. From Danny Wine. The White House has given Iran a late September deadline to begin negotiations. Do you think the administration will take a serious look at advancing sanctions against Iran if the deadline passes without result? Well, my answer to this question is unequivocally yes. The administration has assured us repeatedly. Yesterday I was in the White House and received those assurances yet once again, that should the Iranians reject the administration's offer of engagement, an offer which, by the way, which the State of Israel, the government of Israel, has supported, if the Iranians reject that offer, if they don't respond sufficiently to that offer, if they are unclear about their willingness to engage with the United States and their willingness ultimately to suspend uranium enrichment on Iranian soil, then yes, the administration, I believe, is committed to moving forward with punishing sanctions, crippling sanctions against Iran in an attempt to moderate Iranian behavior and to persuade them to desist from enriching uranium. We're working very, very closely with the American administration on this, coordinating, cooperating, sharing information, and I personally am very optimistic about our ability to work together to present Iran with a credible sanctions threat. A plus K plus me writes in, doesn't Israel's decision to build 455 new settlements units contradict the settlement freeze pledge to Obama? Well, first let me be clear that we're not talking about 455 new settlements, but 455 units, that is apartment buildings, in the areas that the United States calls these settlement blocks. It should be clear that while the administration has requested Israel to freeze all construction in the area beyond the 1967 borders, what's called the 1967 borders, Israel has also made it clear that we're dealing with a population of several 100,000 people, and that the request to suspend all construction, we're talking about construction of a new room for a newly born child, of a nursery school, of a clinic, of a hospital room, that is not only politically but physically impossible. And so for several months now we have been engaged with the administration in a candid, constructive, and fruitful negotiation, finding a middle ground between the administration's request for a settlement freeze and our needs to provide for what we call normal life construction in these settlements. And I am confident that we are moving toward some type of arrangements which would permit direct negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians to resume shortly. And those are our questions today. A final note, please feel free to write in with your questions. We will certainly regard them very seriously. I'll do my best to answer them. And I'll look forward to speaking to you all on Twitter in the near future.